Welcome to Best Academy TV. In this video, we're gonna focus on Newton's third law of motion and the concept of Newton's third law. And we also consider the systems that obey Newton's third law, and we solve some questions on Newton's third law. Okay, now let's proceed on the statement of Newton's third law. Please write Newton's third law of motion states that in every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. In every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Let's look into the mathematical expression of this law. Mathematically, please write FA is equal to minus FB. So this is the mathematical statement of this law. In every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Please take note. So in Newton's third law of motion, there is no specific formula to solve Newton's third law of motion, but there's a concept we can use to solve Newton's third law of motion. But before we consider the concept here, please take note here. Please take note here. Newton's third law is also known as law of interaction or law of cause and effect. Newton's third law of motion is also known as law of interaction or law of cause and effect. Let's consider the concept or steps in solving Newton's third law. Please write concept or steps in solving Newton's third law of motion. Let's consider the first concept here. Okay, concept or steps in solving Newton's third law of motion. Okay, now these are the steps or these are the concepts we can use to solve any question on Newton's third law of motion. Okay, so let's consider the first concept here. Number one, identify the direction of the force of the system. So the first thing you have to do whenever you are solving any question that relates with Newton's third law of motion is to identify the direction of the force of the system. Okay, all right. Now let's understand this first concept here. But before we understand this first concept here, let's know the systems that obey Newton's third law of motion. Now the first system that obey Newton's third law of motion is elevator or lift. Elevator or lift. Now the second system here is mass block system. Mass block system. The third one here is inclined plane. Now these are the systems that obey Newton's third law of motion. Okay. Now, whenever you have any question on these systems, elevator or lift, mass block system, inclined plane, at that point we apply Newton's third law of motion concept. Please take notes. So class, in this system, if I have two masses, how do we identify the direction of the force of the system? If I have two masses, the direction of the force of the system will always go to the greater masses. Please take note. For example, if I have this system to be, maybe I have this system, something like this. I have something like this. Okay, if this block is 20 kg and this one is 30 kg, of course, the system will always go to the greater masses. That is, this guy here will move to this place here. Please take note. You get that now? Okay, like for example here, we have this to be 20 kg. We have this to be 30 kg. The force of the system must move to the greater mass. And which of them here that have the greater mass here is 30 kg. Please take note, okay? Now, but if the system have only one mass, now to identify the direction of this force of the system in that particular system is to know the statement in the equation. If the statement is saying upwards, it means that the direction of the force of the system is going up. If the statement is saying downwards, it means that the direction of the force of the system is going down. Please take note. Okay, let me repeat myself again. To identify the direction of the force when the system have two masses, we always do that. We always identify the direction of the force with the greater masses or with the greater mass. Please take note. Now, if we have a question like this is mass A, or this is mass A, this is mass B. Now, between mass A and mass B, which of them here that have the greater mass here, please, is 30, right? So the system will always move to the 30, the direction of the 30. Please take note. But if I have a system and that system only have one mass, okay, now the direction of the system depends on the equation. If the equation is upwards, that means the direction of the force of the system will move up. The equation is downward, that means the direction of the system will move downwards. Please take note of that, okay? Now, let's consider the next concept here. Concept 2, identify the tension T. Identify the tension T, that is the upward force on the string or rope. Okay, identify the tension T. Now, what is tension here? Tension is the force felt on a rope or on a syringe. Please take note. Any force that is felt on a rope or on a syringe, we call it tension. Please take note. So, which direction do we identify the tension? It's always the upward force on that rope. If I have something like this, class, if I have something like this, if there's two masses, this mass 1, this mass 2, the tension on this block here, on this one here, on this block here, the tension on this block here, it's always the force upward, and the force upward is this one here, this technique. Why? We are going to know what force that we apply downward here. So the same thing here, the tension here, this is the mass M2. So what is the upward force of this M2 is this here. This will be tension. This will be tension. Please take note. So tension is always upwards force. Please take note. That force up on the rope is called tension. That force up on the rope, okay, is called tension. Okay. So let's get the next um concept. Concept 3. Concept 3. Label the weight that is vertical downward force attached to each of the mass. So whenever you have any mass, the downward force of that mass is called weight. The vertical downward force of that mass is called weight. Please take note. So concept 3. So label the weight that is the vertical downward force attached to each of the mass. Okay. So if I have something like this, class, um, I have something like this, a mass like this. Let me call this mass. And we know that if this is a rope here, the upward force here is tension. So remember, action and reaction are equal and opposite. So if force is acting on this up here, it means that force will also act opposite to it, that is downward here. Please take note. And this vertical downward force, we call it weight, which is the same as mg. This opposite force to this tension here is called weight. Please take note. And the formula is mg. Okay. Now, whenever I want to solve any question on this, you must label the weight. The last one here, the last concept here, write down the equation of the net force. That is the total forces on the system. Net force is always N net is equal to MA. So this is the net force here. Please take note. So this is the net force here, class, depending on the force acting there. Okay. So class, but before we consider equation here, we have to know how to identify the direction of forces. If I have two forces, how do we write the net force of those forces? Okay. Now, if I have two forces here, that is, if I have force 1 in this direction, F1, if I have force 2 in this direction, F2. So the total force or the net force will be equal to, class, this first one here, F1, is going to positive direction. Remember, if you have a Cartesian plane like this, here is positive, here is negative. Okay, so this is going to be plus F1. Now this one here is going negative direction, so this will be minus F2. So this is our net force here. But if I have something that relates like this, this force here, F1, this force here, F2, going in the same direction, the total force F net will be equal to F1 plus F2. Okay, let's take note. So before we solve a question here, let's write, take a note here. Take a note here, please. There are systems we apply third law of motion. So we want to consider some of the systems. Whenever you hear those systems, maybe you have any question concerning those systems, you must apply Newton third law of motion. You must apply Newton's third law of motion, okay? Now, what are the systems here? The first one here, A. The first one here, elevator or lift. If you have any question on elevator or lift, we always use the concept of Newton's third law of motion. Please take note. The second one here, class, mass block system. Okay, whenever I have a question here on mass block system, we always apply Newton's third law. The last one here, inclined plane. When you have something that relates with this shape, something like this, I think we have something like this. Okay, whenever I have something that relates with this shape here, we use Newton's third law of motion. Okay, so all you have to do to get each of the questions on the systems that obeys Newton's third law of motion is to hit the subscribe button. Okay, thank you.